What does it mean to be a leader? What are the characteristics and what can you learn from other leaders? Let's join Dave as he shares some of his experiences and learnings from leaders he's worked for. Pebbles and Rocks, Dave Ryan.
Great leaders. What comes to mind when I say great leaders to you? Is it the inspirational leadership of Dr. King, epitomized by the "I have a dream" speech? Is it the leadership of Malala Yousafzai in Afghanistan as she fought through survival for education of young girls against the Taliban regime? Or is it the creative leadership, the likes of Steve Jobs, who've brought us technological miracles like an iPod, iPhone? Undoubtedly, these are great leaders, but to me, studying these leaders, it's like reading a book about Usain Bolt when attempting to run a 5K for the first time. It's an academic exercise, and it really doesn't help us. Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests. We hear it all the time. Leaders are made, they're not born. And what I'd like to share with you today is a few lessons. I could share hundreds, but I'm going to share much fewer than that. I'm just going to share 3 lessons that I have learned from people that I have worked with in the professional environment. And the reason is I obviously respect your time and wouldn't want to take all of your afternoon talking about the myriads of examples, but we'll get to that a little bit later. The first leader I'd like to talk about was Ray. Ray was my first boss when I left college and started work. I'd moved from Ireland over to Boston to work in a startup, and I was eager to make an impact. Now, I didn't quite realize it at the time, but Ray was only 6 years older than me. He had uncharacteristically, for his age, silver hair, but still had a fairly youthful appearance. So a little bit hard to judge exactly where he was at. But he was juggling, driving, growing a engineering team across multiple sites. He was a busy guy, but he still made time to run a marathon. He ran the Boston Marathon in the second year I was over there in under 3 hours. Very impressive way that he had of balancing things. But the one thing that I've learned from Ray, and I keep with me all the time, is that he would never ask someone to do anything that he wouldn't be prepared to do himself. And one example that really stands out to me, I still have strangely fond memories of it, is we were working on a project. We were up against the wall, the schedule, we were way behind schedule, and a customer was coming in. We had to give a presentation over a period of a day and a half, hundreds of slides, and those slides needed to reflect the exact status of the project as we were presenting them. And so it meant long nights in the build-up. Our CEO clocked off at 7 or 8 p.m. the night before the meeting. But Ray stayed with the team who were developing the slides, and he worked with us through the night. We didn't wrap up until 4:30 in the morning before the customer meeting, and ended up just grabbing a couple of hours sleep underneath our desks in the office. It was an incredible experience and really brought the team together. But that's lesson number 1. Don't ask anyone to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. Number 2, the second leader I'd like to talk about was John. In the third company I worked for, John was brought in after about a year as CEO. And the week that he started was the week of our big engineering conference. John set up a meeting room alongside the main conference and brought in all the middle managers and leaders to present, right? So a lot of pressure. You only get one chance to make a first impression, right? For all those new leaders. This is the impression that John made. The first thing he did was he had his new HR leader sit in the front row with his notepad, and without so much as an introduction at the start, he took notes on everything that everyone said. As one of my colleagues was presenting, he was talking about his product roadmap. He said, "This is the widget that we're developing today, and in 6 months' time, we're going to pivot to this other thingamabob." And John spoke up, "If you're still here." In a subsequent meeting, we were discussing a customer that John had had a very poor experience in a meeting with. And he turned to the team and slammed the table and said, "If you ever mention that customer again, we'll be out of here." And of course, we never did. Basically had his fingers in his ears and wrote off 20% of the market. Lesson number 2, be careful of your first impressions and be careful what you ask for. The third leader I'd like to talk about is Patrick. Now, I've only been working in Patrick's group for the last 5 months or so, and I got a chance over the last couple of weeks to work on a project with him. And he was really intense. We had to report out to his boss. Over a period of 8 days, we had to develop a vision for the whole group. He was really tough on us. So schedule a meeting every day. At the end of the day, we had to report on where we're going. And it was never good enough. It was, you need, I don't like this, I don't like that. You need to work on this, refine the messaging here, change those words. Really tough. And the third last day, he really tore into us. But, and this is the critical point, on the second last day, he said, "Look, guys, you've done all the preparation. I've drilled you. You know your stuff. You're in brilliant shape. You're going to knock this out of the park." And you know what? We did. He got us to raise our game. So lesson number 3, raise your game. I've shared just 3 examples of leaders I've worked with, but I could have shared many, many more. There's leaders in community, in family, in sport, in Toastmasters, and each of these leaders that I'm learning from are helping me to raise my leadership potential. And unlike the big leaders, they fit in the glass. So I love this club. I'm surrounded by leaders here who I can learn from. And so, thank you.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator and fellow Toastmasters and guests, and especially developing your leadership style. The introduction was phenomenal. I enjoyed you introducing us to great leaders and sharing, and also your aspect of the impact that those leaders had on you. However, I will go straight to the point. And that is, you told us all about these phenomenal, brilliant leaders. And you shared with us your impressions of those leaders. However, I would have loved for you to tell us, after you examined those leaders, what you developed and described your leadership style. Pinpointing your leadership style would have given us more depth to your presentation. However, you spoke with clarity, vocal variety. Also, your gestures and your props was excellent. But when you give this speech again, and I would love to hear it again, please emphasize your leadership style, the conclusion you came to as to your leadership style. Back to you, Madam General Evaluator.